Welcome to 100 Yards of Football this evening as we're going to break down the University of Alabama taking on Notre Dame in the college football playoff semifinals. If you like the video this evening, please comment and share it. We surely appreciate it. So joining me, as he's been all season, breaking down the University of Alabama, as you see, he's got one of his Christmas gifts this evening. My man, Kevin the Bull Jones, the most talented high school football coach in the state of Georgia. And I like to say this to this young man. He's been a blessing this football season as he knows the Alabama football program inside out. And the young man, I'm going to tell you, is a very talented coach from the defensive standpoint. So please enjoy the video this evening. I'm Vincent Turner. So to get it started, because he's really excited, two of his Crimson Tide players are up for the Heisman. They're playing Saturday in Dallas, Texas for opportunity to play for the national championship, and they've been the best football team all season long. Take it away, Kevin the Bull Jones. Why will Alabama beat Notre Dame on Saturday and advance to the college football national championship game?
Hey, listen, happy holidays, and welcome to everybody that get a chance to tune in this afternoon, this evening. It is a wonderful time to be a college football fan here in America. In spite of everything going on in the world, it's a joyous time to enjoy football because we're down to the Final Four. Okay, we're going to get from the nitty to the gritty. And I want to shout out to my wonderful mother-in-law, Cardell Hunt, for this wonderful, wonderful birthday gift she gave me. I tell you what, coaches, high school coaches out there, I tell you what, boy, when you're in mother-in-laws, and when you're in her great blessings and great place with her, man, you got a wonderful life. It's a great place to be. But now let's talk about some football. It's going to be a great contest coming up. I tell you what, Vincent, one of the most magnificent things about what we're going to see is you have two different spectrums of this game. Yes, Coach Saban is going to have Crimson Tide players ready to play in spite of the injuries to Landon Dickerson. Chris Owens has to step in and play the center position. A lot of questions on how he's going to be able to deal with Kurt Henish and Myron Tungaviola as the fabulous nose guard and defensive tackles for Notre Dame, and one technique I love to call him. You know, he's going to get cornbread Dante Brown to help him out quite a bit. But, you know, Chris Owens is no spring chicken. So he has his work cut out against that fantastic 4-2-5 defense that Notre Dame runs. On the flip side of that, can Notre Dame stop the three-headed monster of Crimson Tide? Can they stop Najee Harris? I don't think so. It's just too much to deal with there. Mac Jones can play all spectrums. And then the chess match going on with offensive coordinator Steve Sarkisian. His ability to put together a game plan that's going to help. And then Brian Kelly's side of it on the offensive side of football. He's a fantastic offensive coordinator as well, but he has a 3 tight end set, Vincent, that can cause problems for us for a little while because we're a 3-4, 3-down lineman, 4 linebacker base defense, which means that with those multiple tight end sets, going to put us in a situation where we're going to have to bring more guys into the box, more guys to the line of scrimmage. And that's when, once we stop that from Notre Dame, they're going to go to that play action game. And Pete Golden did a great job of earlier today mentioning some of the things that he has to worry about a battle of one-on-one matchups. And that's what he's concerned about because they dictate, according to their formation, what they think the coverage that you're going to be in, whether it's man or zone. So it's going to be a fantastic chess match.
Okay, I'm going to ask you an important question this evening about what Notre Dame has to do. How's Alabama going to defend Ian Book of keeping them in the pocket and not getting out of the pocket and running for yards? Clemson did a real good job in the ACC championship game. You know all about the Alabama defense and the program. How are they going to be able to keep him in the pocket?
Well, here's the thing. It's funny you should mention that because most of the success that Ian Book has does come when he comes out of that pocket. He has been able to, when he scrambles, he has exceptional way of being able to scramble to create time for his receivers to get open. They do a magnificent job of perfecting the scramble drill where, according to wherever those receivers run their routes, When they feel that Book is starting to scramble, they get in the proper place. One receiver goes deep, one goes intermediate route, and sometimes that intermediate person comes to the short route, comes back to the quarterback. So they do a great job of that. So you don't want to be in a whole lot of zone against that, because that's where the headaches can start. But on the flip side, if you're in man and you turn your back to Ian Book, then he can take off and start running with the football. And the ironic part about it is the fantastic part that Notre Dame does not run an empty set offense per se. However, they will get in a 12 personnel or 13 personnel, which means one running back, 3 tight ends, or 2 tight ends, preferably whichever they want. But they can put some people in motion. And Coach Pete Golden has mentioned that those are some of the headaches formation-wise that they can attack you with, and then it creates matchup problems where Book really wants to hand the ball off, Vincent, because that's what the formation dictates. And those tight ends do an excellent job of blocking on that C gap, or what we call an outside edge or perimeter, where sometimes the play action game leaves Book wide open to either throw the ball deep or scramble or take off running. So what does Bama have to do? Bama's going to turn around and they're going to come after Book. Why? Because when you come after Book with the speed that Crimson Tide has, it makes for a headache, because you have Christian Harris on one end, and then you have the Punisher, Will Anderson, on the other end. And the fantastic part about what we're going to see, and is in the last 4 games, Bama's had 21 sacks. So what does that tell you? That means that third down play is going to be a perennial situation to deal with, to be able to get the defense off the field. And if they're going to decide to dictate, if they're going to let the formation dictate if they're going to play man coverage or if they're going to play zone coverage and drop 8. But you really don't have any players that can take the top off of a coverage for Notre Dame. So the slow wind and grind is going to be to Book's asset. So sometimes, Vincent, what I'm really saying is he doesn't have to run, because if they're able to, he doesn't have to run, because if he can hand that ball off, they really think that they're going to be in a good situation to be successful. So that's the chess match that I can't wait to see, because I feel like Crimson Tide is going to bring the pressure, because it's going to turn into a matchup of one-on-one battles. And when that happens, Vincent, I think that we have the advantage. But here's the concern. Book does a fantastic job of getting that ball to a lot of players on that offensive side of the ball for Notre Dame. 6 players have over 19 catches on the season. So that means he really doesn't have a favorite target. It's the guy that's open. So we have to keep all eyes on our guys. And Dylan Moses has to go ahead, him and Harris have to go ahead and make sure that inside that box, they're able to stifle the ability of Ian Book to not just get on the edge, but create stuff, because he is great at creating plays.
Okay, another important point I want to bring up. When you look at Mr. Book, the majority of the plays that really made them successful is him going to the tight end. In the SEC championship game, Mr. Bull Jones, the Tide safety struggled against the young man who I consider the best tight end coming in the NFL since Kellen Winslow, by the name of Mr. Pitts, Kyle Pitts. So you got Mr. Book, who likes to go to the tight end a lot. Like I said, I'm asking you, Notre Dame sometimes run even a 3 tight end set. So now, how is Alabama going to be able to defend that with their safeties that's been up and down all season long?
I'm glad you mentioned that, because in the offense, those analysis positions, where those coaches that are in those analysis positions for Bama staff, they do with looking at 3rd and long situations, 3rd and plus yardage, 3rd negative yardage. According to formations, what are you going to see? The homework that's been done throughout last week and now this week is that Patrick Surtain is going to have to take away what they think of as the biggest threat. And that could be determined according to the formation. Okay. Here's one thing that I know that the Fighting Irish will do. They will spread you out sometimes, because then they have a mismatch with 6'4", 6'3" tight ends against 6-foot corners. and safety guys. Okay, Daniel Wright, Malachi Moore, those guys, those are not tall guys. The only one that's tall in the secondary really is Patrick Surtain. So it's really, you have to pick your poison. I think that that's what Crimson Tide is going to do. They're going to decide according to down and distant what person they're going to take away in man coverage, and then what guy they're going to try to bracket if they feel like they need to bracket somebody. So I find it going to be fascinating in that if Notre Dame comes out in a open set, which means empty set, no running back, you know, those are things that give us a little problems, okay, defensively. But if you come out with a one-back set and you have, you know, you spread us out 3-by-1, 3 receivers on one side, one on the other, well, those are some things that we don't have a problem with as much anymore. Likewise against the Ole Miss and the Floridas. But let me say this, sports fans, none of the tight ends or receivers, no discredit to their athletic performances or accomplishments, but none of them could ever match up to what Kyle Pitts does and what he did to us. He's a first-round draft pick, probably a top 10, probably a top 7 pick, and there's a reason why. No discredit. Brian Kelly's going to try to find the mismatches, and what we're going to do, we're going to choke the amount of time he has to identify those mismatches.
Okay, another point I want to bring up this evening. When I look at Alabama from an offensive standpoint, oh, Lord, here we go. When I look for Alabama from an offensive standpoint,
came from a mother love too, Vincent.
Kudos to you said Mrs. Hunt, correct?
Yes.
Kudos, Mrs. Hunt. God bless you this evening. Let me give you an Alabama vibe. But on the offensive standpoint, I really think this Alabama offense is better than the offense last year they had. I really do, based on the production. So I'm looking at Notre Dame, right? I'm looking at this team that's averaged 29 points by halftime. In the last 3 games, they scored almost 40 points by halftime. So if I'm Notre Dame, how do I slow down this magnificent offense? The offensive line is strong, even though they lost Landon Dickerson. Najee Harris is probably the last 2 games been the best player in the nation, who I think should win the Heisman, Devontae Smith. And, of course, the man that's driving the engine. Notre Dame, even though you're a Roll Tide fan, this evening in a great analysis of the program, if Notre Dame has any chance from a defensive standpoint, what do they have to do to slow down this vaunted Lamborghini, Porsche, and BMW all combined?
Well, here's the part that as a defense coordinator that excites me, because when as a high school coach having to face some of the great high school programs here in Georgia, and there's 15 Division I players on the field, you really have to pick your poison. Okay, now here's the game, sports fans. Quickness, speed kills, correct? So we know that Crimson Tide has excellent speed with Najee Harris, all those running backs, as well as the receivers. Okay, so here's the deal. Notre Dame runs a 4-2-5 defense, which means you have 4 down linemen, you have 2 backers. Okay, one of them, the White, David White, or Dan White, should I say, is undersized at 6 foot, 227 pounds, but he's still a very good football player. He's a starter for a reason. Okay, and he's had to deal with speed all season, but in the matchup situations, the scheme of the Fighting Irish is one where they control gaps with a little more of their slanting going on, but they have some speed on their edges too. Okay, I think that let me say hats off to Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, the ACC Defensive Player of the Year. In 2 years, sports fans, he's got 24.5 tackles for losses. Okay, along with 7 interceptions in 2 years. Okay, what does that tell you? 124 tackles total. He is the number 1 player in the ACC on the defensive side of the ball for a reason. 6 foot 1.5, a little under 6'2", 215 pounds. They do a great job, Vincent, of putting him on the edge and rush sometimes as a rush backer. Okay, in their pony sets, I call it, where they bring in those guys in coverage situations. They bring in an extra secondary guy. Although Owusu-Koramoah he's labeled as a rogue, which means he's a hybrid player. He can come off the edge. He can be in coverage. He's a ferocious tackler. Everybody knows that. So he's one of those guys that can give us some fits at times. The question is, are they going to put him in pass coverage to help against Najee Harris. That's the chess match. That's the beautiful part of the game, sports fans. I want you all to see. And then where do they move Najee Harris to find out if Owusu Koromora is going to follow him? Because then that tells you if you got man coverage or you have zone coverage. Okay, Kyle Hamilton from Marist High School, head coach Alan Chadwick. I tell you, fantastic athletes in the Metro Atlanta area. He is the ringleader and the leading tackler for the Fighting Irish. Vincent, these guys only have one freshman starting on the defense. They only have two underclassmen, one on offense, that's the running back, Kyron Williams, and then they have the Hamilton kid at corner. Other than that, they got 20 starters that are either seniors, fifth-year seniors, or they've had another eligibility year because of some redshirt situations, maybe medical. But Vincent, what I'm trying to say to you is that doesn't wow them. They have been in this situation before with fast teams. Yes, it didn't work out well for them against Clemson, okay, because of the matchups. But here's the thing again, that they're not gonna be infatuated, and it's not gonna make them slow down. They're probably gonna say, we've seen this before. Yes, they average 49 points a game. Yes, they're big and fast and strong, but we're no spring chickens. We're gonna try to slow them down a little bit. Maybe they decide to use the same thing Arkansas did, is bring those three secondary guys back and let them play cover three. Okay, so you don't get the deep ball, because that did slow us down a little bit. But then that's when the game with Najee Harris gets the ball dumped off to him, and the Magic Man does what he does. Okay, and he has that Energizer Bunny switch that they hit, and he spins in traffic. Okay, but now who are you going to have covering? Because that's where the great part of the game is going to happen. And let me also mention that of all the great things about Notre Dame and their defense, they do have an edge rusher when they don't have Koromora coming off the edge. Okay, they have Ade Uncle GT. Okay, the defensive end, number 91. Ade is sensational defensive player for him. Long and lanky, extremely long arms, quick burst. This kid can play. So now Alex Leatherwood is going to have his hands full, because he's going to have one of those two speed rushers on him at all times. Lasky, the other defensive lineman, has done a fascinating. Here they have really, Vincent, they have a quick defense, okay? And you're talking to a guy who's for the last 7-8 years, since I left Lovejoy High School, I always had to deal with undersized players on defense, and we had to resort to speed to get up under those big linemen. Okay, so that's my greatest concern about how we're going to handle that. Are we going to continue to do what we do, or are we going to add another wrinkle to add offensive firepower to keep those? They have fast. Notre Dame has fast defensive line. I'll give them that. Okay, we're going to have to find a way to stop them from getting inside our gaps and getting 45 degrees up inside that gap, because that takes away the whole zone read option game. Okay, so that's a big situation that we're going to have to deal with for New Year's Day.
That being said, your final outlook on the game Saturday.
Well, listen, Fighting Irish are 0-6 in BCS, or college football playoff games. And it's not because they didn't face a great team. They faced great programs. And when you get down to the Final Four, that's the way it should be. And I think every sports fan in America would feel that way. But the way I see the game going down is it might not start off as fast for us as we're used to it starting. Okay, because we have to figure out what adjustments, those first 10 plays that we run on offense will be critical. That will tell Coach Sarkisian exactly what are we coaching against what we thought that Notre Dame was going to do, or have they added another wrinkle and now we need to make an adjustment? See, here's my adage, the ball coaching me says, Vincent, I tell my staff there's a plan A, there's a plan B, and then there's a plan C. Now, in some cases, plan C might be get back on the bus. And that's probably what Notre Dame is going to have to do, because it's going to be a rough night for them eventually, but not in the beginning. It's going to be a great game to start. I expect it to be close in the first half. And then in the second half, once all the adjustments are made, I think Crimson Tide will come out on top. But it will be a slow start, and we're going to have to crank some things up. They're not going to let us throw the ball deep, Vincent, and that does make a difference in what we do offensively.
Who's going to win the Heisman Trophy on January the 5th?
I tell you what, I knew you were going to say that. And I tell you what, I had an answer for everything you were going to come at me with today. And I might need to take a little drink of my water on this one, because make sure the A shows when I drink my water. But anyway, listen, sentimental value. I want to see Devontae Smith win it, because pound for pound, he's the most electrifying football player in college football today. Okay. But, those voters that vote are usually the reporters. And, a lot of them guys didn't play football. So they don't understand, Vincent, what it takes to be 170 pounds and be the most dominating player in college football. They gave it to Desmond Howard many, many years ago, but I don't know if they're going to give it to Devontae Smith, but I do believe he deserves it. Otherwise, I think my namesake, Mac Jones, is going to win the Heisman. Either way, it's coming down to Tuscaloosa.
Okay, another question. This two-folded, and we're going to end the show on this. Is Nick Saban the greatest college football coach ever? And is he the greatest coach in Alabama football history?
Well, I guess you slept on that question too. And that's a real good one. Let me say this, and I want to make this perfectly clear. I had a chance to watch some of the history stuff on television about Coach Paul Bear Bryant, and I watched how the people cried talking about him and just mentioning his name and how much he was revered as the man that he was. And although he, sometimes they said they couldn't understand everything he was saying because he had that deep voice, but his contributions to college football and football in general will never be measured to me. I just think he was in a different time and the climate of the time he was raised in, and what he learned how to do to get his point across will be untouched for life. Coach Saban is the other half of that, and I think that he's fascinating as a coach, as a high school coach here in the Metro Atlanta area. You appreciate greatness and watching men do what they do to the best of their ability. I think it's unfair to say one is better than the other, but they're two sitting up there right next to each other. And I think that they're fantastic at what they've done. And Coach Saban, he's probably going to coach a little longer. It looks like he's going to go a lot longer than Coach Bear Bryant, of course, because Bear Bryant stopped in his 60s. Coach Saban is close to 70. And I can tell you right now, he still jogs on the field, Vincent. So he's going nowhere. So all folks think he's going to leave. It's not going to happen. I think those are two of the finest men out there that ever coached the game, along with some of the great ones in the NFL, as well as HBCUs have gone down the line as some of the great coaches. I think all of those men together, I tell you what, you put Don Shula, you put Bear Bryant, Nick Saban, Eddie Robinson, as well as Belichick and some other those coaches, and you have a wonderful room of knowledge and raising men.
But you still didn't answer my question before we end the video today.
What's the question?
Oh, you forgot that quick. I'm going to say it one more time. Is Nick Saban the greatest that's ever done it?
He is one of the greatest to have ever done it, hands down. He is one of the greatest to ever do it, hands down. And that's a fact. You can take that to the bank. He is, hey, listen, and he learned from some great ones. So what do you say from there? See, that's the great part about this game. And when people ask those type of questions, it amazes me, Vincent. You know why? Because we all as coaches learn from somebody. See, we didn't wake up like this. There was something that somebody struck something in us to make us become good at what we do. And we took the baton that was passed to us. Vincent, see, that's the greatest part. All the folks that sit on the couch and talk about who the greatest, but everybody had to learn from somebody. I'm still learning. I'm thinking about what I'm going to do next year to stop people who want to stop me in my press coverage and man coverage. So listen, we learn. It is a evolution, never-ending circle of learning. Now, how you like that answer? Because that's the truth, Bruce.
Well, if you like the video today, please come in and share. We surely appreciate it here at 100 Yards of Football. I'm Vincent Turner. Joining me is the very talented Kevin, the Bull Jones. And as you see, Alabama is in this hard, and he's picking Roll Tide to win the national championship. And I'm going to end it like this. Since Alabama is the #1 team in the country, all I can say is the great band, Leonard Skinner, Sweet Home Alabama. Thank you, and God bless. Enjoy the game this Friday, and enjoy your week. We are 100 yards of football. Have a wonderful